Hi everyone, welcome to the Coding Zoo. If this is your first time joining, my name is Shane and this is the Coding Zoo's JavaScript building blocks series. In this series we go over different JavaScript features, maybe one or two features at a time. So in today's lesson we are going to cover the difference in the forOf loop and the array forEach method. The forEach method is a different way of looping through an array instead of the forOf loop. We'll cover the differences. We will also cover another method on arrays called find. We'll go over what find does. In the next few lessons, we're going to cover different methods that make up an array object that can be used with your array. So I hope that sounds interesting. Let's jump right in. So on my desktop, I have a CZ-JS16 folder. We create that from a template folder that is introduced in our first lesson. If you haven't created that, you can go ahead and stop the video and do so. It's very simple. It basically consists of two files, an index file that links to the main JS file. Go ahead and stop the video here and you can just write it from the screen. And then once you're done, there's a main.js file. Now this main.js file, usually we have it blank, but I carried over the for loop from the previous lesson, forOf loop that is, and I just wanted to compare it with the forEach. Let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so this is our forOf loop. Just in case you didn't see the previous lesson, I have an array called cars. Now I use the forOf loop to loop through that array. I declare a variable called car. You can name it whatever you want. Since we're looping through an array of cars, it makes sense to call it car. So I've got for parentheses let and the variable name car of the array cars in my parentheses curly bracket, and then I'm going to write the code that I want to process the car with. It'll loop through each car. So it's a different way of doing the for loop. Much cleaner interface than the original for loop where you had to specify the array length and all that good stuff. Very cleaner look, very easier to understand. Okay, I'm going to save it and run it for you guys. Oh, I already ran it. Look at there. Okay, so it looped through the cars and printed them out. Pretty cool. We saw that in the last lesson. Let's go over the forEach method, which is very similar. If you want to go more into the forOf, check out the previous video. All right, so in the forEach method, let's go here, and my array is called cars. So I'm going to go cars dot forEach. So any kind of array that you create has these particular methods that are built into the array's base object. That's built in the JavaScript. So forEach is one of those. Upcoming videos, we're going to cover the rest. All right, so I have cars dot forEach, and this is basically a function. So I'm going to pass in another function to this function. Now in previous lessons we learned about anonymous functions, we learned about arrow functions. I'm going to use the ES6 arrow function syntax. You could just use a regular syntax, but I'm going to use the arrow function syntax. If you haven't, if you're not familiar with the arrow function syntax, I'll put a link in the comments below so you can go check out that video. It's a good video. I'll also put the video at the end of this video. So go check it out. Good stuff. All right, so forEach. Well, for what? Car. I'm going to do car again. And I want to perform some action on this car. So I don't have to put squirrely brackets. They're kind of squirrely. I don't have to put squiggly brackets here, squiggly braces. But if I want to have more than one line of code inside of this function, I need to put it. But in this case, actually, I'm only going to write one line of code, so I don't really need them. So I'm just going to write that one line of code. That one line of code is I'm going to do the same as above. Here, I'll just cut and paste it. And save us some time. If you get behind, definitely remember just pause the video and catch up. You want to code this as I code it. It will help you to remember the syntax. All right. So I've got cars.forEach, and I've got a arrow function where I pass in car to that function. That function is one line of code. It document.writes. Document's an object of the browser. It represents your HTML document and writes a function on that. and it writes out a line break plus the car that is being passed into this function in that iteration. Okay, I think I'm missing a parentheses, and I think that will do it. Let's see, cars.forEach, car, gotta double check my code for bugs, document.write, that looks good. We'll find out. Let's go ahead and save it. I'll click refresh. There we go. So it printed out the 3 cars again. So this was the first for loop, and this was the for each loop. So judge for yourself. Look at these 2 loops here. You've got here and you've got here. Which do you think looks cleaner, easier to use? I like this better. I think it's much better, less lines of code, pretty simple syntax. Okay, so what's the difference in this for each and this for? Well, if I wanted to, I could put a if block in here that says if car is equal to, let's say, Lexus, and I can go ahead and break. Okay, now if I press save, click refresh, it printed out Dodge and Lexus, and then it went to my, of course, my for each that's still there, and printed out that. So I was able to break in the middle of that of loop. Can I do that with a for each? Well, let's go ahead and try it. I'm going to put a squiggly bracket so I can have more than one line of code here, and let's print out the first car, and then let's break. So hopefully it will only print out 1 car. Let's put a line between these 2 so it'll be easier to see. Okay, click save, look for bugs. I think it looks good. Click save, go over here, click refresh. There we go, Dodge Charger, Lexus. There's my line, and what happened to my for each? I thought it would print out the first one and then stop. Well, it didn't. That's one of the differences in forOf and for each. You can't actually break, or you can actually use the command break or continue in a for each. So that's one of the downsides of it. I wonder what it says. Yeah, through an error, a legal break statement, array for each. Yeah, can't do it. That's one of the main differences. So if you need to break or continue, for each is not the right one for you. Let's say that this for loop here actually is the only one that prints it out. So I'm going to go here. That might be a good reason to loop through an array and break, right? My first example, not the greatest example. This is a better example. I'm looping through the cars. I'm only looking for Lexus, and if I find it, I'm going to break. Let's try that out. And I'm going to get rid of this break so we won't get the error. Click refresh. There we go. So I only found the Lexus and I printed out. Basically like a search function. I found what I was looking for in an array. So that's one of the benefits of having that break. You can search through an array and find something and then stop. You can't do that with a for each. We saw that. There is a fix for that. So if you don't want to use the forOf, you can use what's called a find method on an array, the find method. So let's try that out. I'm going to document write this out again, and going to copy this syntax here just to save some time, but I'm going to change this to find. So I've got cars.find, and you pass in the car, and you basically want to return whether car is equal to something or not. You want to return true or false. I'm looking for the Lexus. So I'm going to return true or false. I'm going to put that in a variable. Found car. All right, so I have variable found car equals cars find. I'm going to loop through the cars with find the Alexis, and if it returns true, it's going to put it in my variable found car. And I'm going to document dot write out the find car variable, or found car variable. All right, look for bugs. Cars fine. That looks good. Gonna go over here, click refresh, and hopefully I will see it that it was found. There we go. So I loop through the array. I use the find to loop through the array, returning true or false whether something matches, and if it does match, find takes that value, puts it in your variable, and then you can print it out. So that's another way of doing that scenario with a for loop that I showed you that wouldn't work with the forEach. You can use the array.find. Pretty simple stuff. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. If you did, again, click that subscribe button, click the bell, like the video if you liked it. If you know of others who might enjoy the lessons at the Coding Zoo, definitely send them our way. If you have any questions or comments, write them below. We'll get back to you. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you have a great week. See you next time.